Welcome to this video tutorial. This will review what is globalisation and how it has impacted educational policy and subsequently a bit of an impact on educational achievement as well. Massive thank you for watching. Click like if it helps you out, comment and any questions, and make sure that you subscribe. This video tutorial is based on content from the Ken Brownes Sociology for AQA Volume 1, which is a fab textbook, and I'll pop the link for it in the comments if you want to have a look at it. So starting off, what is globalisation? The globalisation is the growing interconnectedness of the nation states. This is argued that globalisation is having an increased effect on the formation of government policies, and there are two ways in which globalisation has impacted. One, with privatisation and marketisation, and we're going to look at some policies from the 1980s, and two, international comparison to form these social policies. So firstly, privatisation and marketisation. Now this is since the 1980s. Privatisation and marketisation has been a feature of educational policies. Lots of influence has come from neoliberal and new right approaches. Now these largely share the functionist view, if you want to put a theoretical background to this, of meritocracy and promoting social integration. However, they do differ in the role of the state in doing this promotion of meritocracy and social integration. They are critical of the role of the state in this way because they believe that the state or government run education is not effective, and they believe that private companies and opening up education to market forces will actually increase the standards of the education that is on offer. Now this idea of privatisation is just a general theme that is occurring within society anyway, because it's promoted by other global organisations such as the Economic Cooperation Organisation, the World Bank, World Trade Organisations, and of course global educational organisations. And we see this idea of marketisation and privatisation occurring in other areas of the economy, such as NHS and privatisation of healthcare, national rail as well. So it is not just education that this privatisation is occurring. And it's believed, according to Hancock, that global education is now worth 18 billion. So it's a massive market, which of course people are really interested in. And the way that this idea of privatisation works is that we now have experts who are basically selling what they know, their expertise, if you want to say it in simple forms. They are selling what they know and why they are successful, and these are people from independent schools, sixth form, universities, educational publishers, and they are selling what they know to priority markets, so Brazil, China and India, and we're seeing this movement of ideas and knowledge being spread globally, and this is having an impact. So carrying on with this idea of how globalisation is impacted, I've just referred to an example how people from the UK are spreading the educational expertise to other countries such as China and Brazil, but also we can now create on a global scale international comparisons, and this is going to have an impact on educational policies that we see in the UK. So what this means is that on a global scale, data is collected on all aspects of education. We've got international student surveys, student satisfaction, and also student achievement from a range of countries. For example, we've got the PISA, the Programme for International Student Assessment, and the TIMSS, the Trends in International Mathematics and Science Study. And what these are doing, they are collecting data about students so we can make international comparisons to judge basically how good is our education system. And what that happens is that they are ranked in league tables. So basically what we're seeing that is occurring with league tables in Britain, for example, we're seeing it actually on a global scale. So we're seeing the same processes occurring. And ranking and where they are ranked on this league table will influence government policy. But we want to see whether our government policies are working. It could influence curriculum reform. and use it to improve teaching and learning. So, for example, in analysis, we could argue that because of these assessments and this comparison, we have created what Alexander calls a PISA panic over the state of British education. And we want miracle cures from other countries who top the league tables, such as China, and we import their policies because we want to use it to improve the British education system. Further examples of actual policies that have been implemented as a result of these international league comparisons was the National Literacy and Numeracy Strategy. So Labour in 1998 up until 2010, 2 hours of literacy every day in primary school. You could argue that this has an impact on class and achievement and gender and achievement as well. Slimming down the curriculum, the coalition has stripped education down to the bare bones, and a lot of schools are really just focusing on the essential knowledge, English, science and some other subjects, which often marginalises dance subjects or creative arts at the expense of the focus on the maths, English and science, because that is what the international league tables are judging the different schools on. Raising academic requirements for trainee teachers based on comparison with Finland. And master teachers. Labour announced that if they won the election in 2015, they would have master teachers in all schools, which is an idea from Singapore. And again, it is raising the standards of education. To evaluate the evaluation of international comparisons, well, it is a good thing. It's useful to see whether education and the money that we spend on our education actually matches the educational achievement, and it's good to see comparisons to see whether something is effective. It is really useful if we are comparing like for like countries, so similar countries in terms of the economy, to see whether we are on par with those different countries. And we do need to create evidence for policymakers in that respect. But the problems that arise is that it's a very narrow way of judging students. It is just based on academic achievement. It ignores student well-being, citizenship, whether they're just generally, are we creating well-rounded individuals? Test results do not necessarily mean students are better or worse. There are concerns about the reliability of collecting the data and the validity, whether they are truthful. We know ourselves that schools can manipulate data. They offload certain students so then they don't appear in league tables statistics, for example. And these policies will have a damaging effect on the policies that are created in the UK. Another way is privatisation. So this is another neoliberal education strategy. And companies that were once owned by the government are now owned by private companies. And Ball, alongside Gilborn and Udall, compare it in two ways, because we've got privatisation in education and privatisation of education. And we'll just explain what the difference is between those two. So in education, so basically schools are managing themselves like private companies. And this will include performance-related pay for teachers, inspection of capita funding, so funding is based on how many students that they have, efficiency and competition between schools, use of non-teaching staff, marketization, and these were developed from the Conservatives in the 80s, continued with Labour in 1997, up until the Coalition in 2010, which has speeded that up. And there's obviously problems with this, and we can apply knowledge that we've got already from marketization policies as well. So for example, if we start to have a look at this capita funding, how many students the school has, well, we know that better schools tend to be in middle class areas. Middle class areas tend to oversubscribe with their schools, and if they get more students, they get more money to spend on resources, on better teachers, better facilities, which will in turn produce better exam results. Weaker or poorer schools tend to be in economically disadvantaged areas. And this was going to have an impact, and this is going to have an impact on performance related pay as well for teachers, because if you're teaching in a school which is in a well-off area, and we have got students that are culturally and economically they've got that capital, they're going to spend their money on educational resources, they're going to spend their money on private tuition, or they're going to spend it on like tutors and other extracurricular activities. These students are going to be doing better anyway, and then we're going to reward teachers in that respect, and that just really marginalises teachers who are working really hard with disadvantaged students who are not going to get the high grades which this performance related pay does reflect. So there's going to be a bit of an inequality, one with the students, but also within the teachers and within the schools, that is created by this process of privatisation in education. Secondly, we've got privatisation of education. So like the NHS or other national organisations have been open up to private companies. So in business design, managing and delivering aspects of education. So we've got school services. So external companies are coming in to run staff development, and these are charging schools, and I mean they're charging them quite a lot of money to run staff development. Management of schools, school inspections, so we've got tribal inspections, which is running Ofsted, designing and building of schools and the branding of schools as well, which will all implement and form educational policies. We've got private companies which are running the examination system also, and again this is going to have an impact on the school system. So to evaluate, this makes schools more efficient, more business-like, become more streamlined, more judged based on targets, and then we can actually quantitatively measure the success of a school. It brings more choice for parents. This is called parentocracy, because then they can choose a school that they want to consume, because they are acting like consumers rather than just parents. We can evaluate that in itself by saying that parentocracy is a myth, and we could use studies such as Gurwitz, who argued that some parents are privileged in the way that they have the skills to choose the schools that they want to send their children to, and we can compare them to the disconnected local choosers on the other hand of the debate. Profit motive means private companies will improve failing schools in poor areas, so we are raising standards, and also a lot of time when private companies do come in, they improve the quality of the school buildings. For example, they get a nice new build, they might have that cash injection of resources as well. So privatisation is supported by some people. Problems of this is that it's drained from the education system, because they may not reinvest the profits that they gain from these schools. Often these schools will cherry pick, so they'll choose the schools with the most potential to gain profit, which is resulting in inequality. So you could argue that the class inequality will occur again. Some schools might go out of business, which will leave children without schools. And we want to examine the equality of educational opportunities and the quality. There will be unequal distribution of resources. Students with educational needs who are more likely from a poorer and economically disadvantaged background are more expensive to teach and may be neglected by the profit companies, and that will marginalise those types of students. If you want to do a little bit of a task, produce yourself a timeline, include all of the main policies. So globalisation and privatisation is just one part of educational policies. I would suggest that you review all of them, the last 100 years, so you can go from 44 all the way up until current day. Make sure that you're applying it to class, gender and ethnicity. What is the impact? What was the aim of the policy? What was the consequence of the policy? Does it cause equality or inequality of achievement? So you've got a little bit of a task there if you want to have a go at it. And as always, massive thank you for watching this summary. Hopefully you found it useful for you, that you can make some notes, and if you've got any questions, you leave them in the comments below or click like, and I shall see you again soon. Bye.